While I was growing up in my parents' house, my access to video games was quite limited. You see, my parents were the old-fashioned type, and even though I look back on it now and am very thankful for it in a weird way, at the time it seemed, well, it kind of sucked. I wasn't allowed to have video games and I wasn't allowed internet access. I had to do things like use my imagination and read books. I studied and I doodled and I came up with other ways to entertain myself. And I think I'm a lot better off now because of it. But at the time, it sucked. Because what small time I had with video games, I knew that I loved to play them. My friends all had them, and I didn't. My first real video game experience came from the Nintendo 64 that a cousin of mine had. But I'm in Arkansas, and my cousin at the time lived by Dallas. And when he visited, I always hoped that he brought his N64 with him. We would play Super Smash Bros. And Mario Kart and other games on split screen, and we really enjoyed it. It was fun. As I grew older and I would spend the night at friends' houses, I would play video games with them, and some of my favorite video game memories were from playing split-screen games on the GameCube or the original Xbox. In fact, I remember my best friend had an Xbox and all sorts of systems at his house, and the first real quote-unquote hardcore game that I played, if you don't count the Super Smash Bros. On the N64, and at that time I was probably too young to really give it, the credence I would today. But the first real hardcore game I ever played was Halo Combat Evolved. I remember where I was when I first played it. It was extremely interesting to me, moving with one thumbstick, looking with the other, shooting and reloading and throwing grenades and blasting aliens. It was all new to me. But it was thrilling and I loved it. I loved playing that game. I remember how bad I was, as we all were. I struggled to move and to hit and to perform every basic functions while he was effortlessly chewing through the alien hordes like a hot knife through butter. Over time, I got better and better and better, which was strange because of how little I actually got to play video games. I became very, very good at them. It was the fact I was so good at them, or I look back and think I was better than my friends, which was odd because they're the ones who lived with it and I didn't. It was one of the reasons that I liked them so much, because I did so well. It gave me a sense of accomplishment. It gave me a sense of pride, I suppose you could say, as a kid. Being better than your friends at video games, it makes you feel good. So the years went by. I never had real access to video games until I finally got enough money to where I knew I could afford them for myself. Of course, the problem was still that I wasn't allowed to have them. My parents always looked down at video games. It's a waste of time, it rots your brain, blah, blah, blah. Now, I had an aunt who actually bought a GameCube. My aunt she's the young at heart kind of person. And she bought a GameCube to play very casual games. We're talking Animal Crossing, Mario Kart Double Dash, and that was kind of what we played as well whenever we got the opportunity. When we went to my aunt's house or whenever the family had a get-together, sometimes they would bring it. And some of my favorite games to this day were on the GameCube. Resident Evil 4 that you're watching here, obviously this is the PC version. But I originally played that at a friend's house. And I bought it when I was totally under 18, which was I felt like such a criminal at the time. It just shows how things change. But I like this game so much. In fact, I think I own it on 4 systems. I have it on the GameCube, the Xbox. I got it on my brother's Wii, and I got it on the PC here. Because you see, my brother, in the same year that Halo 3 came out for the Xbox, he bought a Wii, right? And, I was so pissed. I was like, why would you buy a Wii? He's like, get an Xbox. Because this is before I bought my Xbox. And I played a lot of Wii games as well. And it was an okay system. We played it because it's kind of all we had in the house. We were barely allowed to touch it, but we snuck it when we could. My history with video game playing involves a lot of going behind the back of the household authorities, you see. But really, before I ended up getting an Xbox, the systems that I played were Nintendo games. I played on Nintendo systems. My aunt had the GameCube, and some of my favorite games were on that GameCube. Resident Evil 4. Battalion Wars I really liked. One of my favorite games of all time to this day remains Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean. A mouthful of a name, but it took me about 60 hours to beat that game, and it was an adventure. I remember beating it, where I was sitting, and man, that was one of the first experiences that I had in beating these long, especially single-player sorts of games. It was, I mean, the feeling of accomplishment. It's like finishing a really, really long book. But really, there was a GameCube I had access to every once in a while, a Wii I had access to every once in a while, and a DS that I played whenever I could, which was much easier because it's obviously a lot smaller. I could play it at night, while I was laying in bed. I could lean over the side of the bed and play it and pretend I was sleeping, all sorts of stuff. Metroid Prime Hunters, Elite Beat Agents, all that good stuff. But one thing I didn't get to play often at all was the Xbox. And that was where all the hardcore games were, all the adult games were, all the you know, what all the grown-ups played, or what everyone else played. And I just didn't have access to those. So it got to the point where I finally had enough money to go out and buy an Xbox 360, but I wasn't allowed to have video games. It didn't stop me though. I went to GameStop and I bought one. I bought one, and I remember that the deal that was going on at GameStop at the time was you can get, if you buy an Xbox, then you get 2 games that are $20 or less for free. And so the 2 games that I started out with on the Xbox were Mass Effect and BioShock. 2 of the best games ever made as far as I'm concerned. Fantastic games. Love them to death. But for the years after that, the Xbox was really all I used for gaming. I did the DS every once in a while, but it was primarily the Xbox 360. It was probably around early 2013, mid-2013. It was before the release of the new consoles. I had been sort of keeping up with this Xbox One idea that was coming out, but, you know, I wasn't sold on it. It was at that point where the performance of games and the experience that I was getting from my Xbox really was starting to disappoint me. Games were releasing and they looked poor, or they ran terribly, and I'd only played on consoles, so frame rate to me was, you know, whatever works, whatever works. It got so bad, though, especially with games like Halo 4, with Sniper Elite V2, which was the last game I bought for that Xbox 360, games just started to disappoint. They ran poor, and they looked poor. And this is coming from somebody who max ranked on Battlefield 3, which was one of the worst looking and worst running games on that system. During the time I played on both, I remember when I was playing with my friends on the Xbox, I couldn't help but gush about how good things were on the PC. I said, guys, listen, everything they said, it's true. It runs so much better. It looks so much better. It's so much more clear. Aiming is easier. There's no aim assist. It's all you doing that stuff. You feel like you're the one who earns everything that happens to you. You're not being helped out by a computer. I mean, it feels like you're really deserving all that stuff you do. It's so much smoother. The 64 players, guys, on PC, it's just a whole nother game than playing this 24-person garbage. Trust me. Maybe that's why I ended up kind of making these pro PC videos, because I got to the point where I knew what it was like to play on console, and I remember how my eyes were opened when I went to PC. And I wanted other people to have that better experience as well. I wanted them to share in my gaming joy. For the most part, they said, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, we know. But I couldn't help but wonder, do they really know? If they haven't, then they don't. I mean, describing, like, right now, I play a lot of my games at easily over 100 FPS. Telling people what that's like who have never experienced it, I don't know if they'd be able to know what it is. Like, for instance, I've never actually seen true native real 4K with my naked eyes. I never have. I've just never been in a position where I've seen a screen that's running native 4K. So I can only imagine what it's like. I can't actually know what it's like. In the same way that someone who's never played above 30 FPS, could they really know what playing at 144 FPS is? They can imagine. G-Sync, for instance, no one who's ever played without G-Sync can truly understand what it really is or what it looks like or feels like till they play with it or see it with their own eyes. It's so difficult to get these concepts across to people now that I look back on things. So after being disappointed enough in these games that were coming out for the Xbox 360 near the end of its life, and when people say, oh, but games get better as the console progresses, maybe a little bit sometimes. But with the Xbox 360, that thing had been out for so long, it was really starting to show its age. Years before, but it got to be a problem to me. And so I finally decided at one point, it was time to try out the PC. So I went online, I researched a bunch of stuff, what the parts did, what I needed to have, and I went and got myself a modestly priced pre-built, and I got some games for it. And it blew the Xbox out of the water in pretty much every sense. Cheapo monitor, default mouse and keyboard, very, very simple setups. I didn't have the fancy peripherals, I didn't have the G-Syncs, I didn't have anything amazing or anything that was quote-unquote gamer gear. So there was a couple months there where I had an overlap of still playing on the Xbox, and also I had this PC. It was a very, very middle-of-the-road PC, very modest. And it was still kicking the crap out of the Xbox in terms of how good it looked, in terms of the games I could play, in terms of the frame rate. It was just so much better. I was finally able to see, knowing the capabilities of this PC, I was able to see just how good this experience could be. And I upgraded over time, I got really, really into it, and here I am today. But it was tough to kind of leave the Xbox friends that I had behind. It just got to a point where I was so used to seeing what PC could give me that playing the games on the Xbox had gotten to a point where it was not fun. It was a slog. It was difficult to play. I realized how difficult aiming was. I knew there was something that could be so much better. I mean, it's easy for someone to play at 30 FPS if 30 FPS is all they know, but once my eyes had been opened to 60 FPS at 1080p, having the good visuals on PC, going back it was more difficult by the day. The games on the Xbox were just so inferior to the ones on the PC, it was hard to go back. Once you get to that level of frame rate and the good visuals and the resolution, once you have that freedom and you have this much wider variety of games, once you have all that, it is so immensely difficult to go back to the Xbox 360 and play these games. I mean, it was a chore. Battlefield 3 was one of the first multi-platform games that I played on both. And I think it was the only one, in fact. But it had sold me. Battlefield 3 ran awful on the Xbox. It was, I'm looking back, I'm shocked at how I was able to play it long enough to max rank. But it was what I was used to. It was easier for me to accept. But once my eyes had been opened to the standards of PC gaming, it just nailed the coffin of playing on console. The last game I bought for the Xbox 360 was Sniper Elite V2, and I felt like I wasted my money. It ran bad, it looked bad, it just wasn't enjoyable because of it, and after that, I went full PC. I just don't see myself ever going back. I look at the Xbox One, I look at the PlayStation 4, and it's just such a downgrade. I couldn't imagine ever going back. PC gaming it's what I do. As a gamer, I play on PC. There are just too many advantages for me to go back. I don't even feel the desire to play one casually here and there. I don't even feel any sort of need to buy one for the exclusives. I've got more games than I know what to do with. I'll never play all the games on PC. There's just too many. It was such a huge eye-opener. When I especially had upgraded my GPU from my original. I think I started out with a 550 Ti or something. But I do remember making, my upgrades and seeing that huge boost in performance. It was really, really eye-opening to me. It was something that I had heard about, but seeing it in person really just drove the point home. the 660 Ti to a 780 or whatever I had to a 980 Ti to... It was just seeing these leaps of the performance and the visuals just getting better and better and better. Knowing that I had a hobby that I could put money into if I felt like I wanted it, and I really could get advantages out of it, that is something that really appealed to me. And I think for a lot of people who play only on console, it takes seeing to believing. When PC gamers talk about high frame rates, when they talk about the resolutions, when they talk about all this stuff, it's one of those things you have to see with your own eyes in front of your face to really be able to appreciate and understand how much better it is. It's at the point now where, while I used to play games at 30 FPS, and that was fine with me, now playing at 30 FPS is just torture. I can't do it. If a game runs at 30 FPS, I just can't do that. It's painful to play. But I suppose humans can get used to anything. And I, at one time, was indeed used to having that be what I did. 30 FPS gaming was a standard. Sub 1080p was just standard. It was just, looking back, it really is kind of shocking how quickly, when I sat down with it and installed Battlefield 3, for instance, and started to play it finally on a PC, 64 players instead of the 24 max on the Xbox. I had all this stuff. I had all the frame rates, the resolutions. I had all the graphic options. I had the 64 players. I had the openness of the platform. All this stuff hitting you at once. It was such an eye-opening experience. It was like instantly, I knew I could never go back. This was just so much better. The problem was, I just had to decide at one point that I was going to make a leap. I was going to go out and I was going to buy one. I was going to spend, admittedly, not an immense amount of time online, just doing a little bit of research, but for a lot of people, they see that as this big gap that they have to cross, this mountain that they have to climb, when it's really not a big deal, especially nowadays when you could slap in just some budget GPU right into your PC and bam, you have something more powerful than a modern console. People see this gap as something big. It's too much trouble. It's too difficult. I can't do it. I can't do it. I always notice that it's always the console guys who say, oh, it's too complicated. I'm just not smart enough to do it. And I've never said, to my knowledge, that the PC was too difficult for people. That the PC was just too complex for a console gamer to understand or to run. I don't consider myself a very tech-savvy person. But even I have basically no trouble running these games on the PC. It's hard to imagine at one point I was a hardcore Xbox fanboy. When people brought up PCs, I said the same thing that now I make rebuttal videos to. It's too complicated. Games always crash. There's no games for it. It's too hard. You gotta do all this fiddling with it. It's too much trouble. And now that I game on PC, it's easy to see how that was a hyperbole. I can see that all those issues with PC gaming, and there are some issues with PC gaming, as there are issues with everything, how they were greatly exaggerated. This YouTube channel of mine has experienced a level of success and growth that I really had no intention of it having. I started this just as a little hobby, just a little hobby to do online and make some videos, and now I'm almost at 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that is really odd to me. I mean, it's really surreal to even think about. Again, this is just a little side hobby for me. I don't have a Patreon. I'm going to have one soon because I want to really put more effort into it for everyone who watches and enjoys. But this is still just a side hobby for me. I have other things to do. I've got a life. I like to just enjoy myself when I'm gaming. So to think that, I mean, I would never have believed that one day I would become this relatively, in these circles, well-known pro-PC YouTuber. But, well, I guess that's one of life's pleasant little surprises. A lot of the times I kind of wish my channel would get a little smaller so that I can just kind of keep track of it. Again, since this is just a hobby, since I don't do anything with, there's no money in it, there's no sponsorships, anything like that. I mean, it's weird to know that you have almost 200,000 people who want to see your videos that you post on the internet. I mean, it was never my intention for this to get that big. And I am immensely grateful to everyone who subscribes and follows me on Twitter and communicates with me, who sends me critique, who wants to have me on podcasts. I mean, what a journey in gaming it has been for me, who was once a staunch Xbox console fanboy, and how now I've turned into a huge advocate of PC gaming and pro-consumer video game advocate. I thought I'd make this video to kind of tide people over while I make my thoughts, my quote-unquote review video on Battlefield 1. I have a lot of clips to edit and put together, and that just takes a certain amount of time. So that will be out soon. I will open up a Patreon soon. I'd love to go part-time at my job and spend more time with YouTube. I would like to have more time to spend to dedicate to communicating with my fans, to putting out more stuff, maybe to having hangouts with people. I would like to do that. It's just, I just only have so many hours a week, and I want to enjoy myself first off, and I have the full-time job, so that will be for that. So there you go. That's why I'm a PC gamer now. That's how I got to where I was. That's my short, I know, this is short for me, short history of my gaming experience growing up. So thank you for listening, thanks for watching, and I'll have some stuff out soon. And again, if this Patreon takes off, if I can stop spending time at a full-time gig and have more time to be at home here making content, I would love that. That would be fantastic. Have a good day, have fun playing your games, no matter if they're on console or PC or handheld or anything in between, and I'll see you guys soon.